I don't care what they say about you. We like you. And glad somebody here still has a sense of humor. Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning. Call to order at 9:36 a.m. The special call meeting, the Danville Architectural Heritage Board. First item on the agenda, approval of minutes from August the 5th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's good. All right. And if staff would like to update us on what's been happening for the last 2 months. Oh, one question.
Yes.
Let the minutes duly show. Do we have the city attorney present? Any city commissioners present?
The city attorney had a call at 9, but he was supposed to be coming as soon as he gets off of that.
Okay, so reflected in the minutes. Thank you. I'm sorry, I interrupted you,
Yeah, that's
Tony.
quite all right. We have some ongoing work at the Hub building, as you guys well know. They did the windows. They're working on the restoration of those windows, which I'm super pleased about. And I think, you know, for the record, that's a really good win for you guys. I mean, that we've been able to maintain that structure, and it occupies a prominent place in Danville, and they did it right. So, I mean, that's a big win for us, and I think it's a big win for the city, too, because it really helps maintain.
And the
Main
owners
Street.
found a way to do that fairly economically, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know.
Everybody's happy pretty
Everybody
much?
seems very happy with it. It's, I think, a little sticker shock at the beginning when you start to look at what it's actually going to cost, and you have people pushing you going, oh, replacement windows are the best. Well, they're not. They're simply not the best. The windows they've got up there will work for time memorial if they do them correctly. And what the COA is in front of you, they put storm windows in, which is also recommended by the National Trust and were approved by the Heritage Council. So they don't change the look of the window at all. You won't even see them. But that makes the historic window safe. It keeps the building facade as it should be on your main street. And now they have the RU factor, I guess, that they want through those storm windows. So this is one I think the Heritage Council and you guys and everyone across the state can go thumbs up. So
Cool.
basically that COA was just to approve putting those storm windows in, which I think we talked about a little bit last time. So I went ahead and did that, not to hold that job up, because they were approved by the Heritage Council and National Park Service, and we had talked about it a little bit. So that's basically it for COAs. We have a few people that need to get some in for signage, and I'm pecking at them pretty hardly to do that. So we'll see how that goes, but that's the COA.
And they are refreshing the paint, too, over there. So they're working hard to make that building look up to date.
That's been a busy corner for a week or so.
It has been, and you know, Malcolm Bryan he even called about the paint, and I'm like, no, you're good. You get to paint it, but thank you for calling. It's great. So we've had a real good line of communication, and I think the projects went well. I'm very, very pleased with it. So, thumbs up.
Very good.
Okay.
Continue.
I'll continue.
Continue. Public art update.
Public. Well, I want to say the last time we met, Dana had asked me where we were with the public arts. And basically, COVID hit right at the very beginning of our discussions with it. We had the one workshop where the city commission and you guys had gotten together and talked about the direction that we see this going. And so what I did afterwards was just really compile a consensus of what everybody talked about in I guess the subject matter that we still need to come to some agreement on. In the process, we were going to create a draft after that, but we didn't come to a conclusion on a few things, which we're going to have to follow up on. So we can go through it point by point. If you guys have any questions, I can answer. You know, I looked over the notes pretty copiously the other night, and I think we wanted to first discuss about putting them on either contributing or non-contributing structures. And I think it became the consensus during that meeting that we wanted to see public art throughout the district, and we really didn't care if it was a contributing or non-contributing building. Some care may be given depending on what goes on it if it's a contributing building. But that you were basically going to allow it on all the structures in the downtown district. The one good thing is, with the last survey that we did, we now have that starting list of what is contributing and what is non-contributing. And I've got 36 buildings on that beside what has already been done. So now you're starting to see a good amount of the historic overlay, either designated contributing or non-contributing.
Right.
So when a building comes up in front of you guys, I can basically say, well, this is a contributing structure. It has National Register potential, blah, blah, blah. And that is something, if I were this board, I would consider on any application on any building. If it's a contributing structure, and certainly if it's either listed on the National Register or has that potential, that's certainly something you guys would want to look at about how they apply it to the building. So that was pretty much the consensus on how we wanted to deal with that. Basically, we framed the thing of what you guys were going to actually be responsible for, where it was put on the building, what materials it was going to be used. So those are the questions that I basically asked to both boards as we work through this process. How should it be applied to the structure? We cannot paint on unpainted masonry. That's a universal guideline. We don't do that. Anything mounted on the masonry must really adhere to the current standards, which is pretty boilerplate. And, the adhesive films, we don't want to see those put on anything but the window glass. You don't want to put that adhesive film right onto masonry. That doesn't work very well getting it off. And remember, our guiding principle is that it does not need to be permanent. It needs to be easily removed. So if you stick a plastic film on there that's not easily removed, that could cause permanent damage to the building. So that is something that this board, has to consider when you look at any application on a building.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I don't know if everyone is familiar, but some historic towns, especially in Michigan, all of their murals are being printed via an inkjet printer on a fine fabric mesh and stretched, and you can't tell that it's not paint.
Right.
But it does absolutely has no impact on the building.
Certainly.
And I guess I noticed at the bottom, the murals are permitted for 5 years. Well, what do you do after the 5 years if the paint is still there and they're not going to renew a permit?
Well, that becomes a problem.
And that's why I'm thinking if we say that the murals have to be prepared on a substrate and attached to the building, then they could just be taken off.
Well, we had some discussions about that, and it was my understanding that both this board and the commission really didn't want to make that a rule, that it had to be on, we continue to recommend it. Now, if that is something when we get back into this discussion that you guys want to bring up again, because we're still going to be in the formation of a draft that has to go through both boards.
Now,
Because we haven't hit that point yet.
Right, I know, was
A lot.
putting it out there as, might save ourselves some future problems.
Sure, there's a lot of communities that do that. Shelbyville, Kentucky, for one, does it. Then there's all kinds of substrate that you can put that on. But the basic question here is, are we going to make that a rule through this board or not?
Well, in our notes, we might
I'm intrigued
emphasize
with that. I
this.
think we need to seriously revisit that as we come
Well-
into these rules, because that's got I can see some real positives. I'm interested in what the negatives are, but I can see some
Right.
positives.
Well, and then I will make, when we begin this discussion again, that will be one of the things that we really talk about. And I'll, as we prepare for it, I can get what other cities have done and show you guys examples. I mean, I've been traveling around to a lot of communities lately because I'm doing a lot of outside hiking, just getting out. And you drive through their downtowns and you see what they've done with different applications. So it's truly, it's up to the community how you guys really want to handle that. If you want to make that a hard and fast rule, if you want to continue with it as a recommendation, it's really open for discussion.
I've got a question, and it's at the top of the last page in our handout. And it says, "A property owner and the artist must sign a general release excluding the city of all claims." I really struggle with that. And if the city wants to use private buildings to enhance the integrity of art in our community, and they exclude themselves from any liability at all. I really struggle with that. I would like to see that taken out and have the city responsible if any lawsuits arise from anything that, and in this day and age, anything can happen. So I don't think that being a property owner, I would never submit a piece of artwork to go in my building with that clause in there.
Well, and the reason that we brought that up, there is ongoing lawsuits now in Paducah and and that are very, very nasty. The artist in particular is the artist that did the mural on the building down, what is that? The
Derby shop.
Rags and
Right.
Derby Shop, yeah. There's an ongoing lawsuit in Western Kentucky. Apparently, there was a new building owner that wanted to take that building down. It got into a nasty lawsuit, and I'm not sure that that has been concluded yet. And so during these discussions, and the reason the city was involved in that, and certainly, Mr. Bowling, this can be brought back up for discussion. These are just, the points that were made during that. We're not into the situation we're making this hard and fast law. If, say, the mural gets out of condition or gets in bad shape, and the city orders it painted over or has to go in and do the work itself, that artist could turn around and sue the city for that. So we had that discussion with Stephen Dexter, the city attorney. So that's certainly still open for discussion, and I'm not guiding you guys one way or the other. This is gonna have to be a discussion it's done through you all and the city commission and the city attorney to find out what's legal. That was his recommendation.
Well, and I will say that with all codes enforcement issues, the property owner is responsible. So if we do enforcement, even if you're,
I'm sorry, I don't have a hearing aid yet, do I?
that's okay. I say with all codes enforcement, the property owner is responsible for anything that we enforce. So if we're doing something that's under an ordinance, then we're going to go back to the property owner. If you're renting it to somebody or leasing it to somebody, then you're still ultimately accountable for whatever happens on that property. So that's where this will go back to as well. But I'm like her, we can discuss this, but it's the legal things of how we hold people.
I think that clause could deter future progress on the
I'm
murals
sure.
in downtown.
I'd just add, because that is a big ask and a big discussion, but also going back to Dana's point, if we were requiring everybody to put up a substrate, it wouldn't really be necessarily a big deal. It would change the entire discussion. So that's a point to bring up, but definitely hold off on a big discussion on now.
Perfect timing,
Oh,
Stephen.
just in time.
Wherever you want to. You can sit over here if you want. There's nobody
Pick a
over here.
chair.
We'll let him get set up.
We're talking about public art, Stephen.
In fact, before he gets started, let me finish my
Yes, absolutely.
that I think the city should hold harmless any property owner of any and all, I think that's illegal, any and all claims, if they agree to, if something happens about a lawsuit with a mural on their building. I think the city should be, because they can buy insurance for that a whole lot cheaper, and defend it a whole lot cheaper than an individual property owner, so.
He's referring to the statement at the top of the last page, Stephen. It said, property owners and artists must sign a general release excluding the city of all claims.
And that was basically gleaned out of the public meeting we had between the city commission and the AHB back in the spring before COVID hit. The discussion was framed around what is happening in Western Kentucky with the Andy Rudolph mural out there. And there was some discussion about having a general release
Yeah, It would be my position at this point that the language as it is there is proper, as opposed to having the city hold harmless anyone. The city can be a facilitator of public art should there be a desire for it, but doesn't want to have an endorsement of it in the fact of those that may or may not be damaged by it. So while it can facilitate art in the historic district through its guidelines, they don't want to see that as a tacit approval or acceptance of liability for what that may do to your structure, just as you would in any situation now. If you approve a certain window or soffit in any building now, you wouldn't say, well, we're going to guarantee you that it's going to do the job you need it to, or the window's not going to leak, or that it's not going to be drafty. So with public art, you wouldn't want to make the same type of.
Well, a piece of public art on the wall is not detriment to sustaining the viability of that building, like a window or anything else. So I just really struggle with the city saying that, hey, we want you all to do this, and it will help this community, and it'll go on and on and on, but we're gonna wash our hands of it, and you're gonna be responsible, property owner, if anything goes wrong.
I understand your point there. However,
I don't know the way around it.
yeah, I think that the distinction is the city not saying, hey, we want you to do this, but the city saying, we are open to you doing this in the historic district if you desire to do it. If there's a willing artist and a willing property owner, then the city is saying, if you're in the historic district, we will grant or have a policy for that to be approved. But that doesn't give an endorsement of it. It would be different if the city was the applicant, obviously.
I can see that side of it, but
Yeah.
I also believe that, as I said before you come in, I would never agree to a piece of artwork on a building that I own if I'm gonna be totally responsible and liable for that, in every way, and the city's exempt when they're promoting it. So, anyway, that's.
Yeah, no, I understand, and that'd be your choice as a property owner.
So at some point, we'll probably need to talk about when this starts moving, what language is appropriate, because I'm in no way, shape, or an attorney. These are just the consensus that came out of the last meeting. So we're far from putting this into codified language at all. These are just the beginnings of it. But that was something that was repeatedly brought up during that is fortunately the lawsuits that people are engaging in. And it's not just in Western Kentucky, it's starting to pop up all over the nation with different, I guess, ideological ideas about what art is and how long it can stay. So just be aware of that as we move forward in that process. So.
Well, and ultimately, for the enforcement side of it, we need to know who we go to. Like, if there's a problem with the mural or something like that, then, again, that's where we go to the property owner for anything. If violations, NOVs go to property owners. So, and that's part of the process under the property maintenance code that we deal with as well, so.
And the whole lesson, to me, the whole lesson is here, make sure there's an agreement that all the parties have agreed to, rather than just enter into it and then a year or 6 months later or 2 years later go, oh, we don't know how we're supposed to handle that. We didn't.
Sure.
That's not
In
really-
writing. We
In
want that
writing.
agreement in writing.
In writing.
Yes.
Well, and that's what the problem is now. Nobody thought about that, It was just, oh, yeah, it's great, and let's get it up there, and then there becomes a disagreement between the artist and the building owner, and maybe ultimately the city as well, drug in because of the district. It's just something nobody thought about until it hits you in the face.
Well, even though
like
we've had some
everything else.
issues, we're kind of lucky to be behind the curve on this one because we can have some rules in place as it becomes more
Right. So
of an
I
issue,
think,
probably.
that is something that we will certainly have to continue the discussion on as we get into the second meeting, which again, I feel will be after the first of the year.
Okay.
But these are the things that we need to think about, and
Mayor, to your point, I would, if I were a property owner downtown, which I am, there would be no way I would allow anybody to place something on my structure without a general release from the artist saying that I have no right to intellectual property or copyright on your structure.
Mm-hmm.
Because in whatever the condition may be,
Yeah, and to reply to that, I do have an agreement on the.
yeah.
Summer League.
Well, that's good.
with the arts people up here.
Yeah.
That they will maintain that and take care of it.
See, I think that's the key distinction, because I think when things aren't in writing, obviously, there are presumptions made that could potentially be false. Like if the artist has some type of notion of ownership, I think you have problems, a lot of problems. And let's just take, for instance, I mean, my law office was hit by a car last week. Significant structural damage. I mean, significant to the facade, to the floor joist, everything. Well, let's say that had been on a side where we had a mural. If I was a property owner at that time and it hit a mural, would I be responsible as a property owner as restoring the mural? Well, without an agreement, there might be argument for that, right? As a property owner, I certainly wouldn't want it. As a city, I wouldn't want to guarantee it. And as the artist, you may want it, but you probably aren't going to get it. But if it's not reduced to writing, you see the types of issues that can come about.
Absolutely, and there is an ongoing lawsuit where there was a mural, and I think this is out in the western United States, but the business owner was charging for pictures to stand in front of it, like and the artist sued the business owner because there was that was her intellectual property, and so it gets very, I would always caution structural owners to have some sort of legal agreement in place that says what you can and cannot do and how you're gonna do it, and if something happens, how you're gonna fix that. And, because it can get, I mean, who would have thought of that? You're gonna charge somebody $2 and the artist gets mad and sues you because they feel that that's their intellectual property.
As we're making notes here, it may even be something as that the city would want to see, not to draft a proposal, obviously, but to say as a part of the application process, the city would like to see the written agreement between the artist and the property owner. And that way, it's just a ticker to check a box, and that way the city's at least aware of what that agreement may be.
Actually, I like that idea, Stephen. It's just, I think, a very prudent procedure.
Yes, I think that's a good way to go. That will, when we get back into the discussion, I'll make that a point into the discussion so that everybody.
Run that by me again. I'm sorry, I didn't get
That's
all that,
okay.
Stephen.
I was just saying, as a part of the application process to have a mural approved, this board could request a copy of the agreement, written agreement between the artist and the property owner, just for your file, and also to help people know that you should have an agreement.
Any more questions about that? Okay.
We're good?
See, that's why I'm saying we still got a long ways to go with this.
But we've come a long ways, too.
Oh, yes, we have,
A
without
long
doubt.
ways.
We've come a long way.
All right.
I
So-
believe, did you want to go through the rest of it, or you got satisfied with what you see?
I mean, until the next meeting, these are major points.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But, you know, basically, the only other thing that I would talk with you guys about giving some thought to, it was basically accepted that planning and zoning's definition for a sign was applicable currently to the mural. If someone comes right now and asks for a mural, and this is something we're gonna be talking about later, is the Sun Ordinance, what is the definition of a sign? Well, planning and zoning sign definition is in front of you, and it really does include everything, included painted depictions, which all, you know, all murals are unless it's some form of freestanding art. And so that leads us into what size is appropriate. And that is the big stumbling block. If we go specifically with the sign ordinance, you know, then, and we treat it as, planning and zoning would treat it as a sign, there's specific set sizes that sign can be. If we're going to have to make some sort of variance, I think Steve even talked about, we could apply, the muralist and business owner could apply for a variance of that particular sign, and that they mostly granted it, but that kind of got into a gray area of what was gonna be acceptable as a size of the mural. Certain communities have a set size. It can have a 1/12% or a 14% of the facade. I think that's Bardstown. They do a specific amount on the side of whatever you're painting it at. as it stands, if we go with just, this is going to be a sign, it's 5 and 10% of the building facade that they're looking at. So that, that can make it a fairly small mural. Of course, if you got a 70-foot-long building, it could be sizable. But still, that was the stumbling block, and that's where we really are going to have to get into some discussions on how to handle that specifically.
And wasn't one of the issues that came up is to get a variance from P and Z, you pay money?
There is a fee.
Yeah, there's a fee, and so that was just an attached cost that would have to be
Right.
known beforehand.
Right, but that was, I think everyone was okay with leaving the definition as it was, but then the stumbling block there is, what size are we gonna allow variances? Is there gonna be some process through planning and zoning that they waive that fee? That's where that is caught at. That's the big question.
If you don't mind, I'll put my artist and designer hat on for a minute.
Sure.
And I can tell you that a lot of small murals all over town would just be a real snoozer. The reason to do it is to have something that's impactful. And so I just think that idea that we would apply the same restrictions as a sign, we just might as well say, let's forget about doing this ever again. That's my opinion.
Certainly, and I think that was the general consensus. We just didn't come to a good, clear path on how to get around that. So that, I can see that issue if we want to do it on a substrate, and then how large this thing is going to be. That's kind of the stumbling blocks where we're at. If we can get those questions answered, or at least a consensus on those in the next workshop, I should be able to get a draft together, run it through you, Mr. City Attorney, and then give it to everybody to have a look at, and then move through the process that way. But we've got to get those two particular stumbling blocks figured out before we can really get a draft.
Since we're talking about signs, if I'm out of order, correct me, okay? I've had for a long time, and I still struggle with all the signs you see around town that are just thrown up anywhere. And, we want to protect the integrity. Pardon?
Yeah, you can't bring that one up, John.
Special call meeting, you can't bring,
It's got to be on the agenda,
We can't,
not in a special call. Everything's special called right now. We can talk after, but you can't talk about it right now.
all right, I move we adjourn.
we adjourn.
Well, we're close.
We're close, that's kind of the next item, John.
But unless you all have any other comments you want to make to have me consider, which I'm happy to, and you're more than welcome if you get home and think about something that, I have not thought about, or you want to add into the next discussion, please just, email me or call me, and we'll certainly do that. I expect to move this into probably January, February of this coming year, after we get through the holidays, and given that COVID is ramping again and all kinds of problems. So, and then we've got the election, so we probably will get in through January, February, to try maybe to get another meeting with the combined board to kind of work some of these things out. But again, those are the biggies, no pun intended, on the size of the murals.
Joni, did you take a look at Owensboro and the process that they employ? I was just curious. I had a meeting there and stayed on the riverfront, and as we were walking, there's some large, full facade-facing murals that are impactful in a lot of different ways. And I'm just curious what their process is as an alternative to perhaps Bardstown's.
And I've looked at Owensboro. They have a specific art. They kind of have a public art policy that includes, because those are on the riverfront, that's a whole different district that's kind of governed a different way. And then they have an arts council that helps with that. And I think there's even some public funding for those. Most of the river towns that are on, that have big flood walls, they really have great projects.
But these are on actual structures that I'm talking about, though.
Oh, no, I haven't seen those.
Yeah, these are on actual storefronts or what have you,
Okay.
that would be store size, I should say, that are just kind of in a revamped district.
have
And
not
it's a
looked at that.
business district. It's not
Okay.
facing the river. It's facing, just commercial activity.
No, that I have not looked at, but
So
will.
I think it'd be interesting to see, just as a counterpoint to Bardstown, what they allow. Obviously, they allow a full side facade mural, but I'm wondering what process they have in place to allow it. If they seek it as a variance, or if their historic district approves it, or what have you.
Okay, I'll
I don't know if that in fact is a historic district
Okay.
or not, but I would imagine it, well,
It
it
seems-
seems like it would be, but it may not be, I don't know.
Well, some towns, you know, and I thought Owensboro was one, but maybe I'm mistaken, will have different districts. They'll have an art district, you know, they name them different things. So I'll have to look and see. For some reason, Owensboro gets stuck in my mind on their riverfront, but I could be wrong about that. You know, I was just in Marion County through Lebanon. They've got really cute murals on the side of the building. I mean, it's very large. If you've been down through there, it's a little pig and a donkey hanging up, welcome to Lebanon, really cute on the side of the building. They've got some nice public art, but they basically have no guidelines at all. So, I mean, I think they've been very lucky in that what they've done is good, but that doesn't mean that somebody couldn't do something not really good for the community on that, or something people don't agree with. So you know, we're stuck in that, back to the whole design thing, which we are not gonna deal with at all. So, that's right. We want to continue the discussion, so again, make sure you guys, you know, if you think about something, please do let me know, even if it's off the wall, and I'll look at Owensboro certainly, because we're gonna need to compare our community with similar sized communities and see what's actually working for them. But I will say this to you all, there's no one good path that we can look at other communities and say, this needs to be what Danville wants to do, and what you guys and the city commission and the citizens wanna do. I find that is the best way to work through these. Let the community speak for what it wants to see in its own community.
I really want to be out there where other communities are coming to Danville to see what we're doing.
Yeah, right. So we want to just make sure you always keep in mind, no matter who we look at, this needs to be fitted for our community, and that's part of our charge here to do that. So unless you all have any other questions on this, and again, I'll happily talk all day about it, but
I move adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
I will second it.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Now,